Urgent. A Kazakh knife in Putin's back. Astana is burning bridges. One word in the constitution and Russian influence is gone forever. An icy tsunami has hit the Kremlin. Central Asia steps out of Moscow's shadow. The Russians are cutting to the bone. Sensation. This is what the Kremlin feared so much. Fedorov pulled out an unexpected joker. UAF drone assault monsters are wiping out the Russian army. This innovation of ours is bringing the South back home. The Russian offensive turned into a bloody fiasco after this decision by the Ukrainian military. A conspiracy in the bunker. Putin's executioner is already in the Kremlin. The death sentence has been issued. Who from the inner circle is planning the dictator's liquidation? Russia is on fire. The war has come for everyone. The boomerang has returned. Russia is blazing 24/7. The Russian air defense has simply crumbled. All this and more in our The Russian world is being cut to the bone. One word in the country's supreme law. The Russian language is being crossed out forever. This is the end of Russian influence. Why does this mean the total collapse of Russian influence in the region? Watch. Another low blow to Russia. In supposedly friendly Kazakhstan, they are changing the constitution and the wording on the status of the Russian language. Instead of on par with Kazakh, it will now be alongside.
For Russia, Kazakhstan is an ally, a strategic partner, and a good neighbor with whom we are building multifaceted and equal relations on the principles of friendship, mutual trust, and respect.
The so-called ally and partner Tokayev has put Putin in his place more than once. For example, at a joint briefing with Putin, he pointedly spoke in Kazakh. From the faces of the Russian delegation and Putin himself, it was clear they didn't expect this. Furthermore, while attending a Russian forum, Tokayev stated he does not recognize the legitimacy of the so-called LPR and DPR.
We do not officially recognize Taiwan, nor do we recognize Kosovo, nor South Abkhazia, nor South Ossetia, nor Abkhazia. And, apparently, this principle, will also be applied in the same way to so-called quasi-state territories which, in our view, are the regions of Luhansk and Donetsk.
In addition, the president of Kazakhstan publicly mocked the plans of Putin and Lukashenko to join the country to the so-called Union State.
Recently, the president of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Grigorievich Lukashenko, suggested that Kazakhstan join the Union State. But I appreciate his joke for what it's worth. I think there is no need for this, as other integration associations exist, primarily the Eurasian Economic Union. As for nuclear weapons, we don't need them.
The Kazakh authorities are massively prosecuting their citizens who decided to fight on Russia's side. In 2025, a record 700 criminal cases were opened. Also, according to Tokayev, they are preventing Russia from bypassing Western sanctions.
Regarding the possible circumvention of sanctions, Kazakhstan has clearly stated that it will follow the sanctions regime. We have contacts with the relevant organizations regarding compliance with the sanctions regime.
We are taking measures to ensure that our territory is not used to circumvent these sanctions. Various measures are being taken, including tracking goods, online tracking of goods, including the creation of a specialized website where you can check the presence of a particular company or a particular product on the sanctions list, traderadar.kz. I think all our exporters know about this and accordingly comply with it.
Last fall at the UN General Assembly, Tokayev met with Zelensky and expressed support for Ukraine. Kazakhstan seems to maintain neutrality on the issue of the Russian-Ukrainian war and offers its mediation services.
Kazakhstan has taken a clear position from the very beginning. We know that it is necessary to respect the UN Charter. It is necessary to respect the principles of the UN Charter, namely the territorial integrity of states. Actually, this position determines our approaches to this situation. Of course, people in Kazakhstan know what is happening, and of course they are worried, and of course they want this to end as soon as possible. Therefore, Kazakhstan initially offered its services as perhaps a mediator or a venue for negotiations between the two opposing sides. This position has not changed.
But Russian politicians and propagandists read the signals from Kazakhstan well and therefore regularly threaten war, claiming the same as about Ukraine, that these are supposedly ancestral Russian territories.
If we don't close the topic of Ukraine, then we will have problems with Kazakhstan and with Armenia and with other countries that surround us.
Even with Kazakhstan, you think?
Of course,
Why is that?
Well, look at what is happening today in Kazakhstan in terms of, so to speak, building a certain Kazakh state. What a national mythology is flourishing there regarding independence, regarding the transition to the Latin alphabet. There's a lot of interesting stuff there if you look closely.
The situation in Ukraine is clearly mirrored in Kazakhstan. There are also huge areas populated by Russian speakers.
Some in Kazakhstan believe that in the future we want to take northern Kazakhstan from them according to the Ukrainian scenario, as they say. What do you think? Did we have such plans? Do we have a calculation for this?
I believe that we have historical rights to these lands. This is an industrial region. These are cities that were built by our ancestors. There. Why did we give them away in 91? On what basis?
The Russian dictator also regularly shows his true attitude. He constantly and humiliatingly confuses Tokayev's first name and patronymic and likely does it on purpose.
Everyone knows that the president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, turned for help to the members of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. So Kassym-Jomart Kamelyevich was speaking and, dear Kassym-Jomart Kamelyevich, I'm very glad to see you. So Kassym-Jomart Kamelyevich said that it's somewhere around 27 billion.
President Zelensky has also repeatedly stated that Russia has military plans for Kazakhstan, citing intelligence data.
So we have received some intelligence indicating that among their main priorities at this time are the Baltic states, Moldova, as well as Kazakhstan. These are the closest targets of the Russian Federation.
Tokayev stated he would suppress attempts at separatism, while Kazakh deputies went further and, in response to the Russians, laid claim to territories within Russia.
As responsible and conscientious citizens of our society, we must always stand firmly against any and all manifestations of radicalism, extremism, and separatism in any form. It is important that we remain both delicate in our approach and at the same time unwaveringly firm in our convictions. Ultimately, we must strive to be fair and just in all of our actions and decisions.
One must understand that Novosibirsk itself is not Novosibirsk, it's Nogay Sibir. These are our Kazakh territories. Tyumen is Tyumen. These are the southern lands of the Golden Horde. That is, even further beyond Tyumen are also our territories. Orenburg is not Orenburg, but Orenburg. And at one time it was the capital of the Kazakh state.
Putin is weakening by the day, and his so-called partners, whom he has oppressed and humiliated for decades, have a unique opportunity to pay him back in kind, which they are successfully doing. Sensation. This is what the Kremlin feared so much. Mikhailo Fedorov has laid his main trump card on the table, which turns the Russian Federation's offensive into a bloody farce. Ukraine has officially implemented the latest model of warfare. AFU's drone assault units are already liberating the south. Fedorov's innovation has brought Russians to their knees. The occupiers are fleeing, leaving their equipment. Watch for all the details. Putin's occupiers are in the crosshairs. A new model of warfare is being implemented in Ukraine. We are talking about the creation of drone assault units. The new model combines aerial and ground drones with infantry into a single system, minimizing personnel losses and increasing strike accuracy.
As of today, I simply see a logical and in many respects quite predictable development of assault units, which are evolving into something that will ultimately change the face of future infantry forces worldwide, not just in Ukraine, but likely across many other countries as well, at least until the end of this century. Since the infantryman and the unmanned systems that accompany him, reconnaissance surveillance systems, ground robotic complexes, as well as strike weapons, this is an integral part of today's infantry, and this will be integrated specifically into assault units.
The plan is to scale this experience across all key areas of the front, finally cementing the dominance of unmanned systems in modern warfare strategy. According to the Ministry of Defense, the use of these newest units has already shown concrete successes in southern Ukraine.
At that time, the suppression of Russian positions was carried out in a combined way using both the drone component and assault units. You could say it was a kind of testing of our capabilities, and it showed results. We not only stopped the Russian advance in the Huliai-Pol direction along the right bank of the Haicha River, as well as in the Volcha-Vorona interfluve, which is already the Dnipropetrovsk region, but also forced the Russians to move to the left bank of the Haicha River, pull back, leave their positions and retreat.
According to Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov, every meter of Ukrainian land cost the occupiers huge human casualties. The introduction of drone assault units combining unmanned systems with infantry will allow for much more effective fighting against Russian invaders.
Mikhailo Fedorov is a person who is technically very well, has a very good technical base, is technically well informed about what is happening in the troops and what the troops need. Fresh blood has finally entered the Ministry of Defense, not some stale, senile, retired, or temporary, that is, the blood of a time server. This is about a very concrete and significant change that comes from within the very core concept of the Ministry of Defense itself, as well as its overall approach to further decision-making processes regarding exactly how Ukraine should ultimately win this war.
Although Mikhailo Fedorov has only been in the post of defense minister since January, he is actively implementing a technological approach to warfare. On April 15th, at a Rampant format meeting, Fedorov noted that Ukraine's air defense has significantly strengthened. The interception rate of cruise missiles was 80%, and the interception rate of drones exceeded 90%. And this is despite a very difficult winter when the Russian Federation tried to destroy Ukrainian energy.
On the night of April 15th to 16th, we were even witnesses to how our air defense systems handled practically most of the targets. Short-range air defense shot down the maximum number of possible enemy drones. And medium-range air defense, including our aviation, F-16 fighters and MiG-29, shot down Kh-101 missiles, and 19 missiles out of 20 were shot down. So it's practically an absolute indicator of efficiency. But we still have problems with ballistics.
The Ukraine Defense Contact Group during the Ramstein meeting agreed on air defense support for the country and the supply of missiles for Patriot systems. Germany is also investing $4 billion in strengthening air defense. The United Kingdom is providing its largest drone support package this year. Estonia is joining the air defense reinforcement under the Pearl program.
This primarily strengthens the capabilities of Ukraine's defense forces in conducting both counteroffensive operations and accordingly so-called active defense. But it is also quite noteworthy to mention the statement made by the NATO chief, who said that the Ukrainian side will receive military support from our European partners, with the total value of this assistance being about 60 billion euros.
Protecting the Ukrainian sky has become more than just a security issue. It's a powerful boost for the defense industry and communication with European partners.
Not just at the level of supply us with Patriot system launchers, supply us with surface-to-air guided missiles, PAC-3 type missiles for the Patriot SAM system. But let's also communicate at the level of creating our own air defense system. An inexpensive, low-cost, yet high-tech and functional one for intercepting ballistic missiles.
According to Bloomberg estimates, Ukraine has already become one of Europe's largest sites for combat testing of drones. New solutions are tested right on the battlefield, and successful developments are immediately launched into large-scale production. Putin's death warrant has been signed. The executioner is already in the Kremlin. The inner circle is preparing to eliminate the dictator. While the dictator looks for enemies abroad, the regime's real killer is already breathing down his neck. Putin is in mortal terror. What he feared most has become a reality. The countdown has begun. Watch. Protests against internet restrictions are the work of Russian elites who are plotting an assassination attempt on Putin.
Current attempts to protest only seem small and relatively harmless at first glance. Someone influential is behind them. Perhaps these people are even in the Kremlin. We know about plans for serious protests that could become a problem for our security forces. That's why we're nipping everything in the bud. It's working for now, and the organizers of these vile demonstrations will now defend the internet, then demand a quick end to the special military operation, and after that, I don't rule out they'll organize an assassination attempt on Vladimir Vladimirovich. I'm sure it's already being prepared, said the channel's source.
Actually, the vile demonstrations mentioned by the Kremlin snuffbox source in the Kremlin are the protests against internet restrictions. Recently, people took to the streets in several Russian cities at once. And they came out despite the fact that the rallies weren't authorized in any region. The rallies themselves, it must be admitted, were small and were quickly suppressed. Some organizers were detained even before the protests began. But the Kremlin, I'll remind you, insists that the protests are the work of internal enemies. People are supposedly not protesting because of internet restrictions.
Are the protests in Russia concerning the Telegram shutdown truly organic? They are organic. Organic because some people see this as a certain signal of a breach of their, social contract, yes, between the people and Putin. But what does it in essence consist of? That Putin does whatever he wants, but doesn't touch Russians. But if strictly speaking, well, he wants to fight someone, it's not through mobilization, but through contracts. So he recruits whoever, people, mercenaries from Central Asia, the Middle East, some illegals working in Russia. The main thing is not to touch the Russians themselves.
As for the claim that these internal enemies are plotting an assassination attempt on Putin, there's a catch here too, as they say.
The intelligence services in the Russian Federation, I think their analysts have already realized that after the conflict in the Middle East ends, in all likelihood, Trump will pay Putin a visit too. Just as the Americans went after Maduro, as they went after the late Khamenei in Iran, and well, even what happened to Assad in Syria, this has begun to extremely worry the president of the Russian Federation. And once again, he started hiding deep, even deeper than before, in bunkers. Note that after Putin's recorded address on March 8th, yes, when he delivered that strange speech, he hasn't been seen, he hasn't appeared in public once. This speaks volumes about the fact that he has serious concerns for his own safety. But these fears have to be shifted onto someone, right? But they can't exactly shift them onto Trump right now, where they're trying to sort of stabilize their relations and also profit from the lifting of sanctions. Yes, from the rise in, oil prices. Well, no, of course not.
In short, while Russians gather for frankly toothless rallies, the Kremlin pushes the story of internal enemies and denies the obvious. People took to the streets because they're unhappy with the Kremlin's policies.
The boomerang has returned. Russia is burning. Daily hell for Putin's rear lines. War has come to every home, and this is just the start. Putin's death machine is devouring its own country. While the dictator hides in a bunker, ordinary Russians wake up to the sound of sirens and the roar of explosions. The moment of reckoning has arrived. Where will it strike tomorrow? Watch.
Oh, something exploded. The windows were blown out.
Russia's Black Sea coast once again hosted Ukrainian Lyuty drones. Residents of the town of Tuapse recorded dozens of explosions and were the first to admit the local refinery was on fire. The moment of impact and the subsequent fire were visible even from space, so in the morning vacationers were greeted with quite a view.
I honestly didn't expect this. They hit the plant. Everything is on fire there.
While the local governor kept quiet about the attack, OSINT analysts identified the fire sources in Tuapse.
OSINT analyst Astra, using eyewitness video, identified at least 3 fire sources in Tuapse. 2 are at the Tuapse oil refinery, and 1 is in the sea near the shore. Fuel tanks are burning at the refinery. It is impossible to tell what is burning in the sea from this video, noted the Astra analyst. Fires in Tuapse are also tracked by NASA's firm's Thermal Anomaly Service. But map signatures can be shifted and do not always show the exact location with meter precision.
An emergency was officially declared in the region. And as the fire continued to grow, Tuapse will unfortunately be breathing fumes for more than just one day.
It's burning over there. 2 spots are burning. 2 spots are burning.
So it is better to hold off on vacationing in the Krasnodar region. Vacationing in a region with Russia's largest oil refinery is not the best idea. By the way, this plant is crucial for exports. About 12 million tons of oil are processed here every year. 90% of the products, including oil distillates, fuel oil, diesel, and aviation kerosene, are sold abroad. The Krasnodar refinery is the second major target for Ukrainian drones in 24 hours. Yesterday, Lyuti drones reached Bashkortostan, which is, mind you, 1,500 kilometers away.
The SNKZ plant. 3 drones. Look at all that smoke. That's it, everyone go home, basically.
The Sterlitamak oil refinery has been targeted by drone attacks more than once. It is a legitimate military target for the Ukrainian forces as it produces fuel for the occupiers' aircraft.
They produce a wide range of various chemical products, including, if I understand correctly, aviation fuel. And importantly, this is the specific nature of this plant. It produces various additives, so it's shut down, yet another shutdown for, I don't know how long, several weeks probably, but overall it is a reduction in the combat potential of the Russian army. Well, if there is an insufficient amount of lubricating oil in some sector, then a tank brigade, well, it stops fighting and waits until that necessary oil is delivered to them.
Russian enterprises, thanks to which the Russian army continues its aggression, have also self-destructed. At least that is what the local authorities claim. A technical bang was heard at the Kazan gunpowder plant, where an entire production facility was destroyed. An explosion was also heard at the gunpowder plant in Samara. The activity in Russia is becoming more intense day by day. Officials are no longer hiding this in their public reports. For instance, the governor of the Leningrad region, Drozdenko, stated his region is not just a border area but a frontline one.
We are a region that borders foreign countries today, both by land and by sea. And today our region has the longest border with the unfriendly NATO bloc, with the countries of the unfriendly NATO bloc. But recently, our region has become not only a border area, but also a frontline one. This is evidenced by just one figure that I will now announce. I received it just the other day. Based on the results of the first quarter of 2026, 243 unmanned aerial vehicles of a hostile country were shot down in the sky over the Leningrad region.
If St. Petersburg and its surroundings are a frontline region, then what can be said about the Belgorod region, let alone the Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine, which the invaders have turned into military bases and warehouses? In just one day, the defense forces carried out a series of successful strikes, destroying the aggressors' logistics.
A hypersonic sentence for the Kremlin. Ukraine has created a killer missile. Putin's bunker is target number 1. Kyiv has officially revealed a secret weapon of retribution, the end of Russian air defense. This is what all the Russian generals feared. Ukraine has publicly revealed its cards for the first time. Watch for details.
Ukraine has secretly developed missiles that can fly 500 kilometers deep into Russia. And this is reported by Defense Express experts analyzing the statement of Deputy Fedor Venislavsky. This refers in particular to the development of hypersonic ballistic missiles. Analysts suggest that such systems already exist, although their number is limited. When exactly and against what targets they were used is unknown.
If such launches actually took place, I do not rule out the possibility that they could have occurred in completely different and distant parts of the globe, and it is quite likely that they would not be related in any way to Ukraine's tests. Although the story itself, which is about a secret launch of 2 or more missiles to such incredibly high altitudes, all happening without any publicity or public awareness, well, it really does cause a certain sense of amazement. And if it has been successful, then it's truly a matter of admiration, because it clearly confirms our state's status not only as an aircraft and engine building country, but also as a country that is reclaiming everything we once had in terms of space exploration.
One of the actively developing areas is the so-called air launch. During the war, Ukraine has already tested launching a carrier rocket from a transport plane at an altitude of about 8,000 meters. This approach allows bypassing the most difficult part of the flight, dense atmospheric layers, and potentially increasing the strike range. Such technology can also be used to put satellites into orbit, which is part of a much larger strategy to create our own space infrastructure.
The trajectories of such missiles pass at altitudes of over 100 kilometers, which effectively places them in outer space. At the same time, Ukraine's current air defense systems operate at lower altitudes of up to 30 to 40 kilometers. Therefore, the need to create the space forces of the armed forces aims, among other things, at the legalization of their activities in a new military domain, space.
It is also known, as MP Fedor Venislavsky states, that Ukraine plans to form a sovereign satellite constellation for communication, reconnaissance, and early warning of missile attacks. Currently, these functions are largely provided by partners, but dependence on external data is a risk that Kyiv wants to minimize.
The Russian Federation still cannot create an engine of the same type as the one created at Yuzhmash for launching various types of missiles, a powerful engine. But not only the Russians can't do it, the Americans can't either, because, well, basically, a liquid propellant rocket engine is a very great art. In the field of engine building for space technology, Ukraine remains unsurpassed to this day.
Ukraine also plans to deploy its own kinetic interceptors for fractional orbital missile systems like Oreshnik, even before their warheads separate in space. We're also talking about creating a separate branch for space forces. This is needed in particular for operations in a new military sphere. After all, modern ballistic missiles can reach altitudes of over 100 kilometers, effectively in space. At the same time, Ukrainian air defense today operates effectively at lower altitudes.
If we're talking about it, the Israeli system is basically more suitable for us, but still, to develop it, it took about 8 years and it took about $7 billion. When we say that we are engaged in this, it means we have such resources and we are investing these resources into this whole undertaking, into this research, into this development.
In parallel, Ukraine is also scaling up other technologies. Every day, up to 1,500 interceptor drones are produced in the country. The Ukrainian military is also setting technological records. A soldier from the presidential brigade with the call sign Hulk managed to destroy 2 enemy Shahed-type drones at once, 500 kilometers from the launch site. Such an intercept is unique and the first of its kind in the world. The Ukrainian defense industry is moving to a new level, from drones to ballistics and space. And although many developments remain classified, one thing is clear: technological warfare is becoming key.
That's all for now. But for more fiery news from the front, watch our next